Welcome to our weekly episode of the Three Thought Podcast. And today we have another student from the American Studies program. And actually, she is one of the newest members of the American Studies program. And her name is Sabine. Welcome, Sabine.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Sure. And you're one of the, as far as I know, one of the more consistent listeners of our podcast, as I understand.
I've heard every single one of them. I think it's a great project that you guys have.
Yeah. We're happy that you like it. So, and as usual, we have Bubba, and we have our silent protector, Rasmus, at the table.
I'm not so silent anymore.
Nobody asked you.
So yeah, and just to mention that we actually had an extra episode last time where me and Rasmus, we discussed the NBA so far this season. So if you're interested in that episode, please check that out. We will come with more NBA episodes when we reach the playoffs. But another topic for today, much more, how do you say, a serious topic, especially with the Danish debate going on today with the crosslight gate. We're going to talk about the LGBTQ.
It'll catch on.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
It will catch on. But we're going to talk about LGBTQ++ versus religious freedom. And on this show, we're just going to say LGBT, so we're not discriminating against the Qs or the pluses. We just think that it will be easy just to say LGBT. So please don't wreak havoc on our fan side. We're not discriminating here. But the topic is about the constant U.S. debate about the LGBTQ rights, the LGBT rights. Because, as we know, this is when you compare the U.S. to a lot of the other Western countries, when you talk about Europe and North America, it seems to me that, or I think to a lot of people, that it's not easy to navigate around this gender debate in the U.S. I think we could all agree on that.
Yeah. In America, there's a huge debate on the LGBTQ plus community, and especially also in the South with the religious freedom, where a lot of religious conservatives basically fight everything they can to bring so that LGBT won't get the rights in the country. And it has been a huge topic in America for decades, but especially over the last decade, it had become even more apparent, especially under Obama's period, and also when gay marriage were legalized in 2015.
Yeah.
Sabine, why don't you introduce yourself and talk a little about why you are interested in this issue?
Well, my name is Sabine, and I'm with the American Studies program, bachelor second semester. So yes, I have recently just started here. I'm interested in this topic because I am a member of the LGBT community. I am a lesbian, and I've been out of the closet for, I think, 18 years now. So I'm very well established in my own person to talk about this subject, and it's something that's very near and dear to me, especially with the talks that are going around the world in the various areas like Crosslight Gate in Denmark, but also the U.S., because it's just such a vast difference that they have there, depending on the geographical location and also the religious matters. So it's just it's a very hot topic.
Yeah,
I'd like to get involved.
And just to get this as done as fast as possible, as I hope the debate itself around Crosslight Gate will just pass on. But let's just talk a little bit about what's going on in Denmark. So those who have been hiding under a rock, there have been a recent debate around the crosslights in Denmark, because some people are offended about that it's only... how do you say?
It's
a male figure that's on the crosslights.
Yeah.
I don't even think they were necessarily offended. The article I read about it was just that the mayor in Copenhagen wanted to have more inclusive cross-lights, and I don't even think it was because there have been a lot of complaints about it. I just think it was he wanted to be more inclusive, and it have
kind of backfired.
Yeah.
The articles I've read about it is not that it's so much the politicians who believe it. They have some points as well, but it's the LGBT organizations who are pressing for this matter of the crosslight.
Yeah.
And it just seems like that's their agenda now in the LGBT community, is to get the crosslights changed. And I'm thinking maybe we could focus on something bigger than that. So I don't think that people are offended by it, but I think that people will be offended by it if they don't come to some sort of sensible resolution, some general consensus in Denmark about what should be done with the crosslights.
Yeah, so one of my agenda, because for me it's kind of funny it's happening in Denmark, because, I would try to highlight this as we go on with the discussion, because it's just really funny it's happening in Denmark when you compare the LGBT community in the US and the kind of problem they're facing compared to Denmark. So let's just go on with the American context of this episode. So let's just go on with the definition of LGBTQ. So Sabine, could you explain?
The LGBTQ plus community is the lesbian, the gays, the bisexual, transgender, queer, and the pluses are the ones who encompass those who don't fit into that category, or who don't feel that they fit into that category.
Or just fluid,
It could be
anything.
Yeah.
It could be gender fluid. It could be intersex. It could be pansexual, omnisexual. I've heard that term. I'm not really sure what that means, but it's anybody who doesn't fit that.
Yeah.
Someone tried not that long ago. I read an article where someone said that they think that we should use all the letters instead of using a plus, and that would make the term LGBTQIAOP. That doesn't roll off the tongue as easy.
But
so it's been shortened down to the Q plus.
But even if you try to get all the letters in, I mean, it feels like today that there's always coming new sort of sexualities. So it seems like it will just expand into infinity if we continue adding every single.
You just have to say the alphabet then. It's
that's exactly
the
what
alphabet people are coming. It's just crazy. So I like the fact that it's gone to the Q plus, because then we can just end that there and say it encompasses everybody. And if you don't feel the first letters are yours, then you are in the Q plus area.
I even heard about people defining themselves as elves. So, I mean, it's taking some strange turns here and there. But
elves or elves?
Yeah, elves, like Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Yeah, it becomes weirder and weirder when you Google stuff like I do. But on to the definition of, well, we're going to talk about a lot of Christianity, because it is LGBTQ versus religious freedom. And then you're going to have we need to explain some definitions of Southern Christianity, because in the US, compared to a lot of other Western countries, they're a little bit more religious. And especially in some parts, mostly southern parts of the US, they are more religious. And it's also here we see that the conflict between the LGBTQ versus the religious freedom really takes a hold. So any of you who are familiar with the kind of Christianity that takes a hold in the southern states, I mean, there's of course the Christian evangelism and the Christian fundamentalism, which is basically just that follow everything that follow the path that the Bible tells you.
Yeah, it's scripture, and you can't argue that it's exactly as it says in the Bible. The earth is 5,000 or 10,000 years old, and
and unfortunately there are some homophobic remarks in the Bible. So obviously, a lot of these fundamentalists, they believe that homosexuality is an abomination, and that creates a lot of problems in these states. And luckily, I wrote a paper about this in my second semester, where I used a lot of these statistics because I had to. And so I have some statistics around this particular topic, and a lot of these statistics, they are from 2016, but I imagine that they haven't changed much since. So just to get a clear perspective on it, so it's not only the LGBTQ community who are how do you say targeted in the southern states, but also other religions are attacked in these states, like Jews and African Americans. Not a religion, but the minorities are usually also targeted in these states.
And Muslims, of course.
Yeah, of course, Muslims. And what's really interesting is that homosexuals, they are 240% more likely to be attacked than Jews, 260% more than African Americans. And this is a staggering number, but 440% likely to be attacked than Muslims. And this is where it becomes really surprising, because we talked about this pre-production.
It surprised me. I mean, I would imagine that the most targeted group in America would be Muslims because of 9/11 and because of all the discrimination Muslims have faced because a lot of people who do not know Muslim things, they're all terrorists. So it kind of surprised me that was the highest. I mean, it must even mean that they are the lowest targeted group, since it's 440% more targeted compared to
than the other groups.
Yeah, exactly. But as Denne also pointed out when we were talking about it, it kind of died down after 9/11, after 10 years or something.
Yeah.
But we also discussed, and we do not have the numbers on this, but we think it might have gone up again after Trump was elected.
Yeah, I mean, especially the xenophobia.
Yeah.
Definitely did go up with Trump, because people began to be more public about, their suspicions of Muslims, if you could say it like that. Yeah. So those are surprising numbers, and obviously because a lot of the southern states, they are so religious, people also call this region the Bible Belt. And especially in the Bible Belt, we have these problems with homosexuals being treated as an abomination. So what are your thoughts on that, Sabine?
Well, my thoughts is that that's absolutely horrible, and I feel bad for the people who live in these communities where they're experiencing this kind of discrimination. And obviously I'm hoping for a change in that direction, but it'll take time, because it is a very religious part of the United States that's just so deeply rooted in what they believe. So it'll take time for that to change.
Also, an interesting fact about the Trump administration, his vice president, Mike Pence, is an extremely religious fundamentalist.
He reads the Bible before he reads the Constitution.
Yeah. I mean, he has some insane thoughts. He is, of course, completely anti-gay and would probably do anything to remove gay marriage, which was legalized in 2015 in the Supreme Court, which means it's going to be legalized over the entire country when the Supreme Court make a ruling. And, I mean, also a funny story about Mike Pence. Mike Pence, he cannot be in a room with women if he's the only guy there and his wife is not with him. So he has to have his wife with him when he's with other women in a room, because he's so religious.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane.
Are you sure?
I have to.
It just sounds like to be on the safe side, if you ask me.
Yeah, that's also what I'm thinking. I mean, it sounds like he cannot control himself, so he has to do it. That's
why I masturbate before I go to a party. He just took it to an extreme level, I guess.
Well, I just have to plug one of my absolute favorite videos from after the recent election, because Mike Pence, being the vice president, has to swear in all the new constituents of the Congress. And the senator from Arizona, Kirsten Sinema, she's openly bi. And that was a very big deal. Everybody knows it. So it's not like Mike Pence would not know this. And he has to swear in Senator Sinema. And the video is just, it's just so beautiful because she's like this flamboyant, she's dressed in pink and she's a woman and she's bi and she's in a skirt, and he's this very super conservative standing there like, yes, I have to swear you in, and you can just tell that he's uncomfortable. But at the end of the video, I kind of got the feeling that as she's walking out, he looked at her ass. So that's I watch that video just sometimes for fun,
It's guilty pleasure.
I heard about that story. I think because you do not have to be sworn in on the Bible as some people do it on Constitution, which I would think is a much more sensible thing, because that's the law you should be upheld as a Congress or a representative of the government. But didn't she pick something kind of different to be sworn in on?
I think it was a law book that also had the Constitution in the back of the law book.
Okay.
So it was both a legal book with the Constitution in it, and that was apparently her favorite book. So she wanted that to be sworn in on.
Yeah. So it's just really interesting that clearly the conflict between the LGBT community and the religious people definitely it goes to this absurd level in the U.S. because of how religious people are in the U.S., especially in the Bible Belt. So one of the interesting statistics is the one that I think all the students in the American Studies program have seen before, is the graph which tells all the richest countries, and of course those are the industrialized countries in the West. When you compare them all together, the U.S. is the only country where over 50% actually believes in where religion plays a major role in their life, and not only that they believe in creationism. So I think that because they are so religious and so fundamentally approach religion, that they have this conflict with homosexuality. What do you think about that?
There's a couple of things I think is quite interesting. Well, first of all, it has roots all the way back to the Puritans who came to America before America was a thing, and that was because they wanted to sort of have their sort of Christianity, which was also an extreme form of Christianity, where everything that's ever gone bad in your life or everything that's gone wrong is a punishment from God. But they wanted to have a place where they can freely worship their form of Christianity. So a lot of Puritans lived in America and came to America, that was the land of the free, where they could do this. So it has movements all the way there too. But as Dennis talked about, America is one of the most religious countries in the world, especially Western worlds. And I believe one of the reasons it is, and that's what I find so fascinating about America, is also, I think, the only secular country in the world in terms of laws. You should not establish a religion. I mean, there's nothing about God or any religion in the Constitution, and it's definitely the first secular country. So I actually think it has a huge role to play in America, because it means that, for example, in Denmark, we call it a Christian nation, and we have some kind of tax which is going to pay for the churches and so on. You can opt out of it if you do not want to, but people do not go to church in Denmark, because it's sort of like, yeah, you're born in Denmark, you are Christian, even though most people aren't, that I know.
With quote marks.
Yeah, with quote marks. However, in America, because they do not have an establishment of religion, I believe it made religious people more, what can you say, they try to push a religion more to people. They went out and preached and tried to get people into the religion, because it wasn't sort of a thing that if you're born here, you would be in part of this Christian nation, even though we call it a Christian nation today.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most interesting things about the Puritans is that their whole narrative revolving around Puritans, because the American narrative around Puritans are a romanticized view about Puritans, because even though that there were really religious people, and they were looking upon this city on a hill where this was God's country. They were actually kind of a terror back in Europe. There was a reason for why they had to escape Europe, because they were actually a terror on the populations around Europe, because they couldn't function in the society. I mean, because they were
prosecuted.
They were prosecuting everyone, and they got prosecuted.
Yeah.
So they weren't this how do you say, holy people in the fullest sentence. Yeah, in the fullest sense. So that's one of the interesting narratives that revolves around the Puritans, and I kind of see it continuing in the American history.
Yeah.
Even when you're talking about, homosexuals today, the way that they prosecute, I mean, the really conservative people prosecute homosexuals is just continuing the history.
Yeah, they still cling on to the Bible for guidance and for directions, and that's very fascinating, because the Western world has, in terms of Europe, have sort of discarded that and said, we can look to it for guidance, but we can't follow it verbatim.
Yeah.
And that's the conflict that the U.S. has. And geographically, because you mentioned the Bible Belt, but that's a specific part of the U.S., and then you take a place like California, that's like the gay state.
Yeah.
And
San Francisco.
Yeah. Love San Francisco, been there, want to go there again.
The gay city in America.
The gayest city in America. I met someone from San Francisco there and said, what is it like to live in the gay city in America? This city's gay.
It's just... Yeah,
it's just a contrast in the country where you have this massive sort of freedom and liberty on the West Coast, and then you have this sort of, I wouldn't call it oppression, but sort of discrimination based on other parts of your life. And that contrast of the U.S. is what makes it so interesting and such a wonderful topic to discuss, because the country is divided.
Also, when you talk about it's sort of they also have this civic religion, which is the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. But there are a lot of people in America who believes that the Bible is more important than the Constitution. And Mike Pence is one of those people that he regards the Bible as higher law than the Constitution. So in his sense, he will always follow the Bible before he will follow the Constitution. Mm. And in that sense, that's kind of dangerous, especially if you are in power. Because if you follow your own moral system and your own belief system and do not follow the laws of the country, I mean, you can justify it. And
you apply that belief system into law in a society where a lot of those laws are discarded. That's a really weird thing.
Yeah.
So it can't really amount to anything good, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt that if Mike Pence ever got into any sort of real power, I mean, he's the vice president and all, but let's say that Trump, for some reason, was removed from office, either by death by burger or impeachment, then...
And that is a possibility that he will be impeached.
There is a possibility. Then Mike Pence would take over, and that's a scary scenario, but I have doubts about how much he can actually accomplish based on his religious belief, because the rest of the legal system that's supposed to uphold his checks and balances, they do believe strongly in the Constitution, and that is, the lay of the land. So I'm hoping that they can balance him out, even if he tries to sort of impose his very strong Bible beliefs.
That's kind of interesting, because I thought that he might in some ways do a lot more danger than Trump in some areas, especially when it comes to the LGBT rights.
I think he would try, but I don't think he would succeed.
The thing is, I mean, when you think about all the Republicans and a lot of the conservatives in Congress, a lot of these people are also extremely religious. Mm-hmm. So they probably wouldn't see it as a problem if you try to enforce his religious belief in some sense. And I think that's dangerous. I think the part where you might have some control is in the court, but even the court today is stacked with conservative justices. Yeah. And as people who read anything about America knows about the court system, it should be unbiased and we should be neutral, but far from it.
Yeah, I agree that if it came to it that Mike Pence was president and he sort of tried to put Congress up to the task of making some laws and then having them ratified, I definitely think that a lot of them would go through the court system. and eventually end up in the Supreme Court, and who knows what could happen there because of that 5-4 stacking that they have now. And if we lose a Democratic Supreme Justice, maybe they could put in another one, and then the deck is really stacked with conservatives, and that could be a dangerous moment for the minorities. But I still have faith that the checks and balances system will uphold, and if they get that sort of conservative religious movement within the White House, my hope is that in the other elections that the blues will sort of take over the entirety of Congress to oppose that, because then they can put down vetoes that will obstruct his ideas and laws, and then they can't get his ideas through. I'm hoping.
There's a lot of people who have argued that Mike Pence will be an even bigger danger than Donald Trump. And personally, I don't think he would be, because Donald Trump, in my view, is unhinged. Yeah. And it's more than just religious beliefs. That's the problem with Trump. But Sabine, what do you think about? Do you think Mike Pence could be a bigger threat than Donald Trump is?
I personally don't like Donald Trump at all.
I don't think anybody does.
Not on this table.
Yeah, well, not in
maybe not in this room.
But there are a few.
There are some. We all know at least one.
Yeah. There's always one. So, there's always one in each year.
Like the token conservative friend.
Yeah. Exactly.
I don't know. I think yeah, Casper. Shout out to Casper. Hope you're having fun in Cali. I think that Trump, in many ways, is more dangerous because of the language that he uses, and the rhetoric that he uses. That to me is more dangerous than what he can actually accomplish as far as law. Mike Pence is a little bit more diplomatic in his language, and I think if he went out and said crazy shit like Trump does, then that would be such a shock to his constituents. Like, why are you saying stuff like that? That's not really... So I think the language that Trump uses is more dangerous, whereas maybe the politics that Mike Pence would try to use would be more dangerous. So it's sort of...
That's a good point.
It's sort of who affects who. The language affects the people, and that can incite discrimination and violence, but Mike Pence would do it sort of in a political way. Yeah. So what's more dangerous.
I also believe that Mike Pence, the kind of politics that he believes in, it would be harder to pass, maybe.
Yeah.
Because, but that's just my opinion. So yeah, there's a lot of conflict between the LGBT community and the conservatives.
We'll see if Trump is impeached, then maybe we'll see the actual Mike Pence side come out and see what happens.
Yeah, and Rasmus will take on the questions for today.
Yeah, so we have Sander from your semester who have written 2 questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
So
good man.
Yeah, so I would just like to start with the short one first.
Okay.
So he asked how the society has changed from when you came out the closet until now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, when I came out when I was 16. So that was in the year 2000, I think. Must have been. Yeah, you guys don't know which year I'm born, so you're sitting there doing the math like.
Yeah.
I was in kindergarten. You came out 18 years ago, so it kind of messes up.
Yeah. So, but I'm 34 now. But I came out when I was 16, and when I came out to my parents. I'd already come out to my friends before that, but in my eyes, they don't count. It's when I actually came out to my family. And I was 16, and I came from a small town community in Denmark, and the influence of gay, I would say, just to put it out, the influence in gay media or gay literature, it didn't exist back then. It didn't exist when I started to question my sexuality. It wasn't out there. The information wasn't really available, and when I was growing up, we didn't really, the internet wasn't available to everybody. It was just at school, but you don't want to sit in the IT room with your classmates and Google, am I gay? That could be an awkward situation. So there's just sort of that. It was a different time back then because things weren't as readily available as they are now. Now it's all over. You can Google anything you want. There are organizations that have social media. They can promote things, and they can, you can really sort of get the help now if you have questions about your sexuality in any way. If you feel that there's something in you that you can't put words to, you can actually find the information now more available than when I was young. And I think that's a great thing. It's definitely progress. I think that you can do more in terms of. Let me try to clarify it. I sometimes put the LGBT community sort of up in two groups: the ones who have complications and the ones who don't. Not to imply that people have complications sort of with their person, but who has the hardest time in society. And for the lesbians and gays and bisexuals, I would put them in the maybe not so complicated anymore category, because it's sort of become more accepted. People just raise their hand and go, "But I'm bi," and people go, "Oh, cool." "Oh, he's gay. Oh, cool." It doesn't have that sort of complication, especially in Denmark. Maybe in the United States.
Yeah.
Definitely some places in the States, but in Denmark it's more. They don't have it so hard now because it's been more acceptable to be lesbian, a gay man, or a bisexual.
There's certainly a strong community now.
Yeah, it definitely is. But the complications I see is with the rest of the LGBT community, and that's the transgenders and the queers and all the pluses that are in there. It's those people who are not getting enough attention or enough, I don't know, just, I wouldn't say media time, but they're not being represented as much, and that's why people sort of get scared, I think, that people don't understand what they are and what they do or what they want. And then it becomes a frightening moment for the non-LGBT people, like, what is this?
Yeah.
So there has to be more focus on them, especially in terms of transgender and the gender fluid community.
Also, I think it's a much smaller minority. I think that is a part of the reason too.
It is.
And also, talking about mental gaps. Especially transsexuals, the whole thing about you don't feel like you're the gender that you're born into. How do you even begin to explain those kind of things, especially from someone who doesn't have those problems? I think there's a huge mental gap right there.
Yeah.
So.
I think a lot of people, especially today, could imagine you being attracted to the same sex if you're not gay, because if you're straight and you're attracted to the opposite sex, it isn't that much of a leap to just imagine being attracted to the same gender as you, or same sex as you are, because that's kind of.
I do that too. I look at a handsome man and go, "Wow, if I were straight."
Exactly.
Definitely him.
It's not that a difficult concept, but the idea that you do not feel like you're born in the white sex, I think that's a concept people have a hard time grasping.
Yeah.
I just have an add-on to this question, actually. Sure. Would you say it would have been more difficult to come out as a lesbian in the United States, even if it were in San Francisco, for example, than it was in Denmark?
That's a good question. I think in San Francisco probably not that much, because it is a very historical gay community, going all the way back to the 60s, I think. So there it would probably be like a safe haven, that you could go there and just come out the closet and go, yes, I'm gay. Definitely I would, if I lived in the South in the US, I probably wouldn't come out to anybody until I was an adult and had my own life and my own safety networks and friends that I trusted. I definitely wouldn't do that.
There are a lot of cases where even when you're coming out of the closets in the South, especially in the Bible Belt, where you actually get shunned from your family.
Yeah.
There are a lot of numerous cases where that has happened. Even in the paper I wrote, I had to. I even included a story from someone called Joshua, who actually attended college at the time where he decided to come out of the closet, and even when he was out of he had moved out. there was still a lot of problems. I mean, where the parents were coming to the college and trying to drag him back home because it wasn't a safe environment and everything. And then, actually, when he came home, there was actually a priest cornering him. So they locked the doors in the house and tried to, pray the gay away.
Yeah.
I mean, there are just a lot of crazy examples.
But I gotta be honest, I think just the notion of pray the gay away is a hilarious notion. But
it has a nice ring to it.
It's catchy.
It is really catchy.
But as Denne were talking about, it's a huge problem, especially in the religious area. We also have in some states have banned it in America, these gay conversion therapy camps, where they basically believe sort of like a normal school camp. You can basically convert people from being gay to being straight, and it never works. I mean, I've seen some of the interviews with people who say it works and they're not gay anymore. And when you see them speaking about their experience and just the way they act, you can clearly see they're still gay. I mean, it doesn't change them at all, but it is a huge problem in America, and why several states have decided to ban gay conversion camps, because a lot of people end up committing suicide because they cannot change. It's not something you choose.
And that's a big problem, not only in the States, but also here in Denmark, that people feel that that's the only way out, that they don't have a safety network, a safe haven they can go to, and they don't know how to get there. So both for the US and for Denmark, there has to be more information about where you can go to be safe.
Yeah.
I just got reminded of the South Park episode, because I just love using South Park as a source material, because they're so damn genius, those who work with South Park. And the one episode where Butters, where his parents think that he's gay, where he actually ends up in one of those gay conversion camps where there's just mass suicide everywhere. It's absolutely crazy. And that's one of the interesting statistics, because around the Bible Belt, that's also where most of the homosexuals are committing suicide.
Yeah,
it is a problem. And the problem, and what's a bigger problem, is that there are still a huge amount of people who still believes that homosexuality or any kind of deviation from the norm is an abomination. So
then we have the second question. It's a little longer and a bit more complicated.
Okay.
Here, Sander ask how does the LGBT community in the Western world try to improve and support the conditions for the LGBT community in the Middle East?
That's a very good question. I'm so glad he asked that to me here in front of the mic. I don't actually have any sort of sources or information about specifically what they do. I do know that a lot of what the LGBT community does, especially on a private level, is try to highlight the injustices that are going on in the Middle East, the beheadings, and they throw people off the building because they're gay, and sort of just get that out in the world and say this is happening. And it's basically just changing people's minds by showing them the atrocities that happen, and through that that the LGBT community and also other people can put pressure on their own government to say this is happening in that country. You have to do something about it. Maybe sanctions, or you do something politically that can affect their situation. Also, just that the governments can provide sort of a fugitive act of some sort, where if there are LGBT people in the Middle East who feel that they cannot be safe, that they can go anywhere and seek asylum, and it won't be a problem based on their nationality, but based on their sexuality. And there have been cases where I actually think it was Denmark that sent a guy back to Afghanistan because they felt that, it's safe enough for you to be there, but things haven't changed that much in that place. And sure enough, when he got there, he got killed.
And when getting back to the Middle East compared to America, one of the interesting things about America that the biggest ally in the Middle East is Saudi Arabia.
Exactly.
And Saudi Arabia is probably if not one of the worst countries when it comes to these issues. And it's in that sense, America in a lot of ways, when it comes to Saudi Arabia, are kind of hypocrites because they do a lot of atrocious things against mankind and a lot of war crimes against, or not war crimes, against a lot of crimes against humanity. But because they are the biggest allies, they basically do not do anything about it. So there's also this entire aspect of they keep on shunning fundamentalist Islamic countries like Iran, but at the same time, probably the most fundamentalist country is the biggest ally of America.
Yeah, just the whole point that you were talking about. This has always been one of the things, if I have to criticize the LGBT community, is that where every time you talk about these kind of issues, I always think about why it's always solely about Western countries, because the atrocities committed against LGBT people is just far worse in the Eastern societies. And also, not only that, but being an immigrant myself, coming into Denmark, I actually know a lot of people, gay people or just women who is trying to be independent, how they can be. There are a lot of issues where they're just oppressed, and that's always been one of the things that I just have to criticize, because that's why something like Crosslight Gate, it just becomes a joke, man, because there are just far worse things happening in this world, and this is not what you need to focus on.
And that's the point that I wanted to get to is especially the LGBT organizations in Denmark wanting to change the crosslights. You can really, I want to criticize them too, because that's just not important right now. There are other issues, and you could use your time more efficiently to help communities both in Denmark and abroad by using your time to highlight these issues in terms of the Middle East and the things that they're going through, like Saudi Arabia beheading people, but we don't do anything because they're a big key player on a market, so we can't really do something about it. They should really do more to sort of highlight that and say this just can't be right, and there has to be something done about it. And in terms of Denmark and nationally, what can we do? There just has to be more focus on the LGBT community, and especially, like I said, the complicated groups that people don't know about. There has to be more information about them. Do a documentary, an infomercial, I don't know, just more about them so people can learn about it and start to accept it. Because changing crosslights, not really going to change people's minds. People are just going to go, oh shit, not this again. You have to sort of change things from the bottom.
Just do something important. Really.
Just do something that makes sense.
Yeah, and just to give some context, man, even when you just talk about basic women's rights that we actually do take for granted in Western countries at times, you just have to look at places like India, for example, where women are treated like second-class citizens at times, where you're getting married off to, you're sold, basically. It really one of those things that frustrates me as a person, because I consider myself a real feminist at times. Sometimes where I think the movement is just going places where I'm thinking, do you really think that you're doing a difference? And that's basically it.
You just have to look at it. Is this important enough? Will this make a difference? Changing crosslights probably won't do anything. No. But maybe highlighting some key issues in society and just changing people's opinion about it, maybe that will work better.
When it comes to this anti-gay and religious fundamentalist, the thing I find so fascinating about sort of this homophobia, it's almost impossible to exist without religion, because it doesn't make sense to hate gay people if you are not religious, because if you're not gay, it doesn't affect you. But if you're religious, you actually believe it's an abomination, and then all of a sudden it becomes an issue.
I actually have a good story to tell about that because last year I was at a lecture at the main library up by the station, and it was a lecture given by a gay man who is also a Muslim. He's a translator as well into Arabic, and he has a PhD in Arabic and religious studies, I think. Very brilliant talk. He's a gay man and he's a Muslim. And the whole talk is, can you actually combine these? Because being a Muslim, a lot of people would think you can't be gay because of the religion. And he actually explained you can. And he's done studies in the Quran and just, gone through it and say, yes, I can actually be a gay man. If it's a sin, according to the Quran, then it's my sin, my personal sin. And it doesn't affect anybody else. I'm the only one who has to be accountable to God. So it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks the religion says, because my religion, as I interpret it, says that yes, I can be a Muslim and a gay man. And that was just a brilliant lecture that actually enlightened people on, because we think of the Middle East and Islam as the anti-gay place. You can absolutely be a Muslim and be gay.
Yeah, I mean, one of the really important distinctions I've learned throughout my life, is because, I've grown up in the Hindu tradition, a strong religion too. But what I learned is that there's a distinct difference between culture and religion, and often these two, they just get mixed up, and of course it gets confusing. But a lot of times people try to mix this together also because there's not a lot of places in the Bible or in the Quran or any other religious scriptures where they say they're against homosexuality. I mean, there's a lot of self-contradictions in the Bible or the Quran. I mean, millions of places in those kind of scriptures where there's just a lot of self-contradictions, and when you just take the one side of a debate where you're only taking the homophobic remarks from the Bible or the Quran, that's because you chose to do it, because there are also a lot of other places where they're actually for it. I mean, there's just an important difference between culture and religion.
And one of the things I think interesting when you're talking about culture, there's this aspect that a lot of religious people talk that is going to contaminate the culture or destroy civilization. That's sort of the argument if you legalize gay marriage, which doesn't make sense. And that was also one of the arguments they made in the case that they legalized gay marriage in America back in 2015. The argument for gay marriage should be illegal was that it is going to affect the culture and affect the kids and all these sorts of arguments. And when we were asked how it's going to be that, we didn't have an answer. Yeah. Which was also one of the reasons why gay marriage became legalized, because you cannot make a claim and then say, when you are asked further into how it's going to happen, like, I don't know, but it's going to happen. It's an absurd idea, but a lot of people believe it when you're so integrated with this religious thought that it's a sin.
I mean, basically, it's just one of the... I saw a video about this, a professor talking about religion. The way you think about yourself, or the way you perceive the world, that's how you're also going to perceive a religious book. I mean, if you're a violent person, you're going to perceive the Bible or the Quran violently. If you're a peaceful person, you're going to interpret it peacefully. If you're a homophobic person, you're definitely gonna interpret it homophobically. Yes. That's just
Leviticus, let's go.
Yeah, I mean,
kill the gays.
That's just how religion works, because I mean, religion isn't the same for two different persons. It just isn't. So for me, it's always been a ludicrous idea that the conservative people, they know how the world works, and therefore homosexuality is an abomination. I mean,
yeah, and it's also how you perceive religion. If it's something just personal to you, it's just something that you have, or you have it as a community. Because when you have it as a community, you try to instill that onto them. But if it's just personal, like the gay man that I mentioned in the lecture, who is also a Muslim, that's his business. He's married to a non-Muslim, and he doesn't participate in his religion, but it's personal to him. So it's all about the individual versus the community. And some societies, especially like the Bible Belt, they have it as that like religion is a community thing.
Yeah, I mean, even in places like Denmark, I mean, a lot of Muslim people in Denmark also have trouble, being accepted into the family if they can come out of the closet. I mean, I don't even know a single Tamil people person who is gay yet, but there probably is. I mean, just not saying anything.
You probably also know somebody, but they have not come out of the closet.
Yeah,
maybe. You don't know.
But this entire idea with religious freedom, as Sabine was mentioning, there is a lot of people in the Bible Belt who believes that their religious freedom is being under attack because of gay marriage, and it's such an absurd idea. But as Sabine was mentioning, it's because of a community thing. It's not that their belief system is suddenly under attack. You can believe whatever you want, but if people in their community start coming out, then it's going to be a problem because they all have decided in the community that homosexuality is a sin.
Yeah, it's like basically like those people who think, well, it's not a problem if it's not my family. I mean, that's also a situation that a lot of these conservatives are afraid of. What if my children someday become gay?
Yeah,
I mean, that's just it's just how it is.
Yeah,
right now.
But I think the interesting question is: do you think is it better in America now, or is it getting worse? I mean, under Obama, it's clearly got better. Because Obama was the first president who actually got out and endorsed gay marriage and said there's nothing wrong with it. It got legalized in the Supreme Court. But now we got Donald Trump, and well, to be honest and to be fair, Donald Trump doesn't care about gay marriage at all. He has actually, there's some internal leaks that actually said that he's making fun of Mike Pence for being so anti-gay. So when there's a gay person in the vicinity, it's like, oh, Mike Pence, be careful, he's gay, and sort of making fun of Mike Pence for being so religious. It's kind of hilarious. But with Mike Pence as vice president, do you think it's getting worse, or is it still getting better?
No, I just think the movement towards progression is just too much of a pressure right now because, I mean, look at Hillary Clinton. When you know she's changing her politics, you know what the trend is.
That's true.
Yeah, she was against it and then she was for it. And
yeah, I mean,
I mean, about Hillary Clinton. I mean, I read that people were criticizing her because she changed her minds. But she changed it for something that a lot of people think is better.
But I don't think
of course.
That's not
but
criticism.
I think the motivation behind it was wrong because obviously we're totally for, at least on this table, totally for gay marriage and everything. But Hillary Clinton has a history of changing her politics based on the political trends.
Yeah,
exactly,
and that's the problem.
She came out was in 2014. She changed her mind.
Yeah,
and that's the problem because sure, you're for gay marriage, great, nothing wrong with that. But it just seems like she changed because all of a sudden, because Obama was already out at that moment, the polls have shifted towards most people in America actually support gay marriage.
And this is not first time.
Yeah, and that's the problem with Hillary Clinton. You feel like she's trying to read where the political winds are blowing, and she's changing her position because of that. That's why people did not trust her. She's
just the classic politician who is just trying to make a way for her to get it in a position of power. I mean, it's one of the things I love Bernie Sanders for, because he has a list of policies and he believes those are the right things to do, and he doesn't change it. And where Hillary Clinton, where the classic politician at the age of 20, 30 will try to think, okay, how can I become a president? It isn't about how can I make this country a better place, but more about how can I...
It's a popularity contest.
Yeah, how can I complete my career goals, basically?
Yeah, I think it was a power struggle for her.
Nah.
I also think she wanted to prove that first she could be the first female president, and that she will actually get some of the credit because everybody knows that she had a lot of say in the Bill Clinton administration.
Yeah. I mean, she is fucking him.
But yeah, that was a little off topic. Yeah, I think you're right that it is getting better because you cannot sort of put the genie back in the bottle.
I mean, to be honest, if she didn't care about her political career, I think she would have left Bill Clinton.
Absolutely.
After what he did.
Yeah.
I mean, she just...
Yeah, or maybe a few years after he was done with his presidency, she'd be like, I'm getting a divorce, I'm a strong, independent woman. But yeah, it's a political move that they're still together.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I mean, she's just...
But that's
she's a career woman. That's just it.
She's a career politician.
But,
But Sabine earlier in the podcast mentioned a quite interesting idea with what's more dangerous: a president who just spews a lot of things out because they can have a huge impact on society, or Mike Pence, who actually knows how politics in Washington works. And I think when we're talking about President Obama, it shows how much of an effect it had for him coming out and supporting gay marriage, because it changed within like a year when he came out, and all of a sudden, I believe it's like 10 or 20 point swing in people who were against gay marriage suddenly in favor of it. So this idea with the president sort of setting the agenda in society, that's a real thing. You cannot underestimate it.
We even had a comment on one of our episodes on YouTube where some random women actually wrote, "It's because of Obama that our children are now around gay people or something." And and that was actually kind of hilarious.
We laughed so hard.
We laughed really hard on that, and we just thought, good job, Obama.
And we also we have no idea who that woman was. So it
was an American. It was an American. That was the funny thing. So we hope that her comment could spark some kind of...
well, I hope she hears this one.
I hope so too. But that was an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
And perfect timing with wrapping everything up. So thank you for being on the show, Sabine.
Thank you for having me.
We hope we can have you someday in the future too, in one of our future episodes. And thanks to Bubba and Rasmus too.
And remember, if anybody has anything they want to discuss, just write to us, because we're always interested in having these discussions about topics you are maybe interested in, and we will always bring something to the table.
Yes, and remember, if you like our episodes, follow our SoundCloud and Facebook page, and
YouTube.
And we will come out with weekly episodes.
Yeah.